This is Tommy's Outdoors 59, and you probably can hear some wind howling. And that's because we have a red weather warning at the moment, just one of our regular winter storms. So what a better time to sit back and prepare a bunch of podcasts for you guys. Today, our guest is Dan Curley, who is the chairman of National Association of Regional Game Councils, better known as NARGC. We sat down with Dan and we spoke about a number of things related to NARGC. We discussed what NARGC is and what they do. We spoke about the state of countryside, decline in wildlife, and also we talked about conservation projects that NARGC is involved in, projects related to Woodcock and many others. We briefly mentioned predator control, but probably the topic that most of you are waiting for and are here for is coming EU ban on lead ammunition, lead shots and lead ammunition. During the podcast, I mentioned a number of times a series of YouTube videos that I produced some time ago related to that issue. But here in this podcast, you can hear directly from Dan latest news related to the ban on lead shots and more broadly, ban on lead in shooting, hunting, and fishing in general. So without any further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Dan Curley and National Association of Regional Game Councils. Dan, welcome to the show.
Thanks very much, Tommy. Glad to be here.
I think we were talking like how we met, and I think it was back in the time when I was doing like a series of videos about lead and about the ban on lead shots by EU. And I think that somehow I got contacted with you, and then we have a kind of a back and forth. I think we have a conversation over the phone. You send me a bunch of materials, which I then turned into a 3-part video series about EU ban on lead shots and lead. So people who are listening to that, they can go to Tommy's Outdoors YouTube channel and check out those videos. But even at the time, we said hey, we should do the podcast one day. So here we are.
Okay, that's correct, Tommy. Yeah, it must be about 6 months ago we talked first. So
yeah.
The lead thing has moved on a bit, so it moved a bit lately. So there is a bit to talk about as well.
Yeah, we're going to talk about it as well. But maybe for starters, just for our listeners, what is National Association of Regional Game Councils? What are the game councils, and why do they need national association? Can you lay that out just so people have a background what we're talking about?
Yeah, well, the National Association of Regional Game Councils, or NARGC for short, is running for approximately 50 years, and it was originally set up as there was gun clubs in every area, and then there was county bodies, and it was kind of the natural progression that there be a national body, which is the NARGC. It's in other words, it's the association of all the regional game councils. So there's 28 county bodies in the NARGC. And them 28 bodies would have roughly 960 clubs all over Ireland. So there's practically a club in every parish in the country in Ireland of the NARGC. Yeah. We would currently we have just about 24,000 paid up members in it. Yeah, and
all the people who have an insurance card, there are members.
Yes, there is another body or two as well, but they wouldn't be as big as us. We would be the biggest by a long way.
Yeah, but I mean, NARGC insurance card. All the people who have that insurance, they automatically NARGC members.
Correct. Yeah, they're what we call an associate member.
Associate
member. Yeah.
So what are the membership statuses? So they're associate members, and there are other types of members.
Well, technically, our county bodies are the 28 bodies are our governing body. So in other words, but the clubs then are the governing body of the county bodies, and the members in obviously are the governing body of the clubs. But in order to kind of bring it all together, we are all the one family at the end of the day. Every member we do a thing called fund membership, which is a type of insurance cover for our members.
Yes.
And each member has that, and he gets the card you describe, so which makes him an associate member of us. you know. But if it came to a vote at the national level, it's only the county body delegates can vote at it. The members cannot vote at it, if you know what I mean. You know,
sure.
So it's a tiered structure from club or from member to club to county to national, if you know what I mean.
Gotcha. Yeah. So you mentioned that these are like a gun clubs that are associated. So tell me, is the angle or is the majority of clubs and people are purely sport shooters, or there are more like a hunters and you know, which would you say what's the biggest?
Well, the biggest would be your traditional gun club, where the game where fellas are in a parish that they either rear game and shoot. That would be our biggest membership. But we would have some claybird shooters. We have hunt clubs, if you're familiar with them, where fellas don't use guns at all. They're just foot harriers, as they're also known as, where they have beagles. We would have some clubs of them.
Okay.
We would have a few archery clubs.
Wow.
We would have a wide diversion of the country sports.
Yes.
But by and large, the vast majority would be our traditional gun club of our membership, you know.
Yes. Okay. Okay. So because, you know, obviously we started our conversation and it started from the issue with lead, but obviously there is a lot that's going on, and the NARGC has a lot of interest in terms of hunting and in terms of various types of hunting, and whether it's a predator control and whether it's other types of hunting. So do you feel like you're also I think representing a face like a European hunters organization for Ireland, right?
Yes. Well, there is an organisation, Face Ireland, but we would be one of the biggest partners in it by a long way.
Okay.
But there is more than us in it, but we would be a very big partner of it. I personally go to Face meetings in Europe as well. I was at one only last week in Europe.
Wow.
And we would be part of Face Europe, which represents approximately 7 million hunters across Europe, in practically every country in Europe, or near enough too, you know.
Yeah.
So Face Europe is the next step up from us. It's the European European body, you know what I mean?
Sure.
Yeah.
And tell me, how do you see Face and what Face is doing? Because, you know, as a kind of like a new hunter, like a beginner hunter, right? I got into hunting like just 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And I feel like, especially in this day and age where hunting is under a lot of pressure from various, you know, environmental groups and the people who think it's you know, cruel and inhumane and so on and so forth. Hunting needs a lot of representative people who will take care of hunters, and I feel like Face is not visible enough. So is it like they're not visible, but they're doing a lot of good job, or is it something that, you know, could be improved, do you think?
Well, like all things, it probably could be improved. They are doing a lot of work. They would have a body. There would be, obviously, the European Union is a huge. There's a huge work to be done there, because nearly all the legislation coming to Ireland at the minute starts its life there and it comes from there. Face is good. They went through a bit of a change in the last couple of years. They should be better in the next couple of years. I think we've made a lot of changes to them that should get them more at what we would call the cold face issues, or the issues, you know, that's affecting the ordinary man with the gun, or, you know, the problems we all face in the countryside. We think they will be better, and the war maybe went a little bit off kilter, like a lot of organisations do, I suppose, from time to time. And there has been a couple of changes in the last couple of years of personnel, and one thing, in fact, there's an Irishman leading it now, a fellow called Dr. David Scannell. He was appointed there about 6 months ago, roughly. And we look forward. He would have a good record in Ireland and indeed in Europe. He was in Europe previously, but a lesser job. He has got the secretary's job now, which is kind of the top job in Face. We expect big things from David as well. He's been very good down the years, and we think that there has been very positive changes in the last while in Face, and we hope it will continue, and we hope that they get more central in meeting the EU and trying to impress on the EU, you know, not to restrict what we have done for years, and what, you know, the good conservation work and all the other work we do by narrow-minded tunnel vision kind of policies, Yeah. So
yeah. So what would you say are the biggest problems right now, like hunters are facing? What would be like a first thing that you would, or maybe the biggest thing that you would like to work on first, like...
Yeah, there's many issues, obviously.
Yeah, please. So, give us top 3.
I suppose our bread and butter is game in the field or game in our clubs, which has been declining. It's obviously a lot of it is outside our control, and that it's habitat loss.
Yes.
The countryside that I grew up in, I'm hunting about 40 years, give or take. The countryside I grew up in and the countryside that's there now, you wouldn't, if you came back from somewhere, you wouldn't recognize it.
Yes.
There's that much vegetation taken out of the country. There's ditches taken out. There's all the what we used to call the rough ground years ago. The bits down the bottom of fields, which was good for game. It's obviously been driven by the EU and Irish government for food production, basically. And maybe give an incentive to farmers, and a lot of it short-sighted stuff in that, for instance, they're going on in the last couple of years, they were cutting ditches down to the very bare minimum, down to just a couple of twigs left for in the name of food production, the Department of Agriculture would come out and say to a farmer he had to use every square inch of his land, and there was some very short-sighted stuff going on, and it led to because farmers have to earn a living, and they, at the end of the day, it's a business to them, and they have to put bread and butter on the table for their families.
Absolutely.
And they win. They had to go with it to a certain extent, but unfortunately, has done an awful lot of damage to the country. The amount of ditches taken out now in the last couple of years, and with the gloss, and we expect in the new CAP 2020, which is coming in shortly. That there will be changes in this, but unfortunately a lot of damage has been done, and it will take a good few years to reverse it, but hopefully it will be reversed. And just, I suppose, to move on a little bit from that, this whole carbon footprint obviously is big news at the minute on everything. And this is one of the big mistakes was made as well, that, the ditches and the hedges and the vegetation, generally trees, they need to be in the countryside, to counter that carbon.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, they've been taken out for, as I said, for very dubious reasons down the years, some of the time. And I think going forward, all farmers will have to have more hedges, more ditches. Even maybe dairy people or people who are in high production in the farming, they still should have, hedges and a good degree of vegetation in their farm as part of that program. This thing where a farmer has maybe 150 acres completely divided by electric fences with nothing in the line of vegetation. That should be a thing of the past.
Yes.
That should be done away with.
Yes.
It's good for no one. It's not even good for the land over the longer term, because trees and vegetation break up the structure of the land. They help to break up the land gets compact. If the farm is just spreading slurry on it and production. Yeah. And I think it's widely accepted now that the land is losing its productivity because of that as well, So that needs to stop big time. But there is a move towards that, but hopefully it'll be done in a systematic, in a fair way for farmers as well, because farmers are the key here.
Yes.
If you can give the farmers the right incentive to do these things, they will do it.
Yeah, many want to do it. They want to do it. Just like you say, they have to put their bread and butter on the table, so they often doing what they have to rather than what they would like to.
Exactly, and farmers have always been good conservation. Like I remember down the years, farmers would be cutting silage or whatever. If they saw a clutch of birds, be the pheasants or be the whatever, they would get off the tractor and go out and push them out of the, But unfortunately, maybe we've lost a little bit of that down the years as well. The farmers were always looked after the wildlife on their farm. They always were conscious of it. They'd always, if they seen something, they'd try to do their best for it.
Of course.
But unfortunately, maybe we gone a little bit away from it with some of the younger farmers, and we need to go back there and try to get farmers thinking wildlife, thinking more vegetation around their farms, not just, and they still can produce, the farms can still be very, very productive.
Yeah.
A ditch of maybe 4 foot in the bottom is not going to waste up much.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Plus it gives great shelter for stock, for cattle,
Yeah.
and all that. So, I mean, there's a balance here But unfortunately, we've lost the balance over the last maybe 20 years, particularly, badly. And unfortunately, it has caused a lot of problems. That is the biggest threat that we have seen over the years. Obviously, clubs trying to keep pheasants on the ground, it's a difficult problem because with no proper habitat, pheasants weren't breeding particularly well. A lot of the time, pheasant won't go out into a big open field. They need cover. They need somewhere to hide. And so do a lot of other wildlife. But it has been a problem. That probably has been the biggest problem from a game shooter's perspective. Now there is obviously some positives. It's not all negative. The woodcock they come in from foreign mostly. Now we have a native woodcock as well, but
we get to the woodcock in a second because I want to specifically talk about the woodcock. But I just want to back out to what you said just a second ago, and it's fascinating that the first thing you mentioned is the really destruction of the habitat, and there's less and less game. Are you familiar about this book called Whittled Away? Written by Pádraig Fogarty. He's in the Irish Wildlife Trust. He's a campaign officer of Irish Wildlife Trust. So I'm curious about your opinion, because it seems to me like there is these two fractions. On one hand, there are people who are talking about the conservation, and they want to conserve the nature, and they want the animals and all that, and they want to rewild and so on and so forth. And on the other hand, we have shooters and the hunters and so. And it seems like both groups want the same thing. They want the same thing. They want a lot of wildlife. They want a lot of habitat. But it seems like there's like a tension. They kind of seems to be fighting over with each other. What do you have any comments on that? And can it be like, okay, we disagree on these items, right? Because, for example, you want all the deer and all the foxes to be, free, and I want to shoot them. But at the same time, we can work on the things that we agree upon, right? Let's sort out the habitat. Let's sort out, forestry and so on. Is there a way to get these two groups talking and kind of working towards conservation together rather than being opposed?
There probably is. We would have worked on stuff together down the years. We would have. Where we probably disagree, and you touched on it slightly there, is some of them people are against killing any animal, or that's kind of their principle. Now, of course, they are a little bit naive in that it is an animal world. Like Darwin pinned it down how many 100 years ago. It's survival of the fittest, and it's still there, and it's still.
And this animal gonna die anyway.
They are, and
probably being shot by a hunter is like a best death that animal can have.
Yes,
it's much better than starvation.
Starvation, and unfortunately, there is another thing, and if you're looking probably for the second biggest destructive thing in the Irish over the last, is that a number of predators, particularly, have really become very, very plentiful in the wild. For instance, you have things like the hooded crow or the grey crow, the magpie. They are everywhere. I mean, everywhere, and they have really, really dominated the wildlife scene over the last 20, 30 years as well. For some reason, it's hard just to put your finger why they've got so dominant. They're very
adaptable.
Correct. Yes, that is their, and you could put the fox into the same category. Very adaptable. You could put a fox on the moon and he'd live. You know what I mean? And he has proved it down the years. Those foxes brought to Australia by the English to hunt. 200 years ago, and now they're the most dominant creature in Australia.
In Australia, it's a mess.
They have adapted everywhere. And they are adapted. Of course, they can eat anything. They can live anywhere. And the grey crow is the same. They're predator, of course. But of course, the word predator is they will predate on the other animals, and that is the problem. The other animals, their habitat is a bit compromised. They're a bit compromised. Then the predators are taking their toll off them as well. And they have put, while the others were already in trouble, the predators, for the want of a better word, they put the final nails in the coffin, if you know what I mean, for some of them, because they were predating. They're good at what they do. Grey crows, magpies, they are good at what they do, make no mistake, and the other animals are vulnerable, and particularly, of course, the real vulnerability is around nesting time. If a grey crow gets a nest and raids the eggs, that bird is going to have no offspring that year, and that bird needs to breed, particularly if they're one of the really endangered ones.
I remember seeing, I was on holidays, it was a number of years ago, like a decade ago, And there was a lot of people, and some sightseeing, and it was a crow basically robbing and eating the nest of the other birds. And the birds were obviously, trying to defend it, and it was like a, scene. Yeah. And the people were like horrified. They were like, they didn't understand what's going on. Like, oh my God, these birds. Like, well, that's how nature works. So that like, how these people have no idea. They think that the crow is eating of the chips they're gonna throw from their Big Mac or whatever. It's like
that's completely natural for them.
Yeah,
that's what they'll do, and they'll do it till the cows come home if they get a chance to do it. Yeah. That's nature. Yeah. I suppose go back to the point you were on about the other people.
Yeah.
They were naive in relation to that for the last 20 years, by and large, because they took on projects. For instance, there was the Curley project, there was the Cardon Creek project on the Callows, and they didn't. You needed zero tolerance for predators around, because them birds were on their last legs, so you needed to really protect the nests and protect the whole lot. And they didn't probably protect them enough in some of them projects. What I mean? They needed to be a lot more thorough on the grey crow. It had to be eradication or very close to in them particular area. I don't mean everywhere, but in them particular areas, because all the crow had to be right was once. If she got the nest once, it was gone.
Yeah.
And that bird was gone for that year. No production, and they already down to probably single-digit numbers anyway. They needed to breed. So they were naive. In that nowadays they do accept that the crows and all these have to be controlled, which is a big move for them. But that only came maybe the last 5 to 10 years. Before that, they would have said, let nature take its course, let nature find its level, which we found it didn't find its level.
Yeah. I find that the people who are in those organizations, they probably would both on the level of people who are actually want to do something, they would find the common language. I think there's just like a regular members who gets drawn to these organizations are so different. And I think this is the problem, that people don't want to listen to each other arguments, and they're getting very emotional, and they're getting very and it's sad, because like you said, like the first thing that you said is like it's a habitat loss, and the countryside, right? And I remember that book it's called Whittled Away by Padraig Fogarty. This is exactly what he's saying about, like, how this used to look like, what birds we used to have, and we can hear, and like right now, none of that is around. And, I would love to see an NARGC and Irish Wildlife Trust, for example, working together, which I don't think is going to happen for various reasons.
Well, it will happen to some degree, but then there's extremes in that. I know of the man you're talking about. I don't know a lot about him, but I know his name, and I haven't read the book, but I would imagine I know what he's saying, and by and large. But there's extremes in that too.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Padraig is not extreme at all. I have him on the podcast twice, and he's very reasonable about it. And this is what I'm saying, like, we all should work together.
Yeah, we will work, and we have worked. Like, there has been projects where we have worked with them, and it has worked well by and large.
Really?
But there is. Yeah, there's projects like there's a Ballydangan grouse project in South Roscommon. You mightn't be aware of it.
Oh no, I didn't hear about it.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, they would have worked there together. Now our people would have been leading it, but the Boardwatch would be there with them to do counts with them, to work with them. Like, we would have worked together, and we will probably down the years we will be working more together.
It's awesome. Oh, it's very optimistic. I'm so glad to hear that.
No, we wouldn't be against it. The problem is if they come with something like you can't control foxes, or you can't control, because we know if you don't control them, your project is already seriously compromised if you don't do it.
Let's talk about foxes. So this is a nice segue, and let's talk about foxes and predator control. Like, we don't like this is something that, for my benefit, even like. Every time you want to call the animal, right? You want to organize call or whatever. You need to know what is the population and the, terrain of the area. As far as I know, we have no census. We have no idea how many foxes we have. So, it's like if someone is talking to me like, oh, this guy is like a bloodthirsty psychopath because he's shooting foxes. I have a hard time to defend that. I don't think that there's bloodthirsty psychopaths, obviously. But I also have a hard time to formulate argument in defense, because we don't know how many foxes we have, like overall, whether the number is dropping, whether the number is going up, whether it's, what's the population dynamic, what is density.
Yeah, well, I don't know that anyone fully knows, but we say our members and who's on the ground, the fox population has never been in trouble. The only time it might have been in trouble was in the late 70s, when there was an outbreak of rabies. I don't know, you probably don't remember this. Yeah. There was an outbreak of rabies in France, and they started coming here for buying fox skins.
Oh.
And there was a lot of hunting of them.
Okay.
I mean, a lot of hunting of foxes.
So as usual, the market hunting kind of is...
Yeah, and the money was quite big for them at the time, But I mean, I think every one of our members would accept after that you could never wipe out foxes in this country, even if you wanted to try do it,
Really?
That they are that adaptable, they're that good at surviving.
I heard somewhere that on the British Isles, that includes Ireland, but in both, that the fox population dropped 40%. I don't know where that number come from, but this is my point, that anyone can go out and say whatever they want, and
I don't.
If someone has an attitude like, oh, fox hunting should be banned, right? And they hear like, oh, fox population dropped 40%, that gets perpetuated. Like nobody checked, nobody fact checked. It just gets perpetuated, right? And then there's another guy said like, oh, there's foxes more than any, like, and again, like people who like shooting foxes, like, oh, you see, and then is there any project like that would kind of try to assess? And I'm just going about foxes, but I'm listeners to this podcast heard me talking many times about deer census. We have no idea how many deer we have. Like, is there any chance we will have sort of a count of foxes and deers and badgers, so we actually know what's going on with these animals?
We do have a vermin competition in the NARGC where every club partakes in a vermin, and they give in the number of foxes that they shot. And it has been consistent down the years.
Okay.
You're talking maybe there could be 30,000 foxes shot in the year or something. I just can't think off the top of my head now what it was last year.
But that number is steady.
It's steady, and there is no indication but that the foxes are doing well and always have done well and always will do well. Yeah. That has been consistent the whole time. Even, for instance, there's diseases in dogs, and we all assume foxes will probably get the diseases, but then it never seems to affect foxes. Or they seem to be able to, parvo, which is common in dogs, or there's a number of other ones as well. Your standard dog is injected for 10 different vaccines.
Yes, exactly.
And we, even some fellas who hunt foxes a bit will say, foxes surely are subject to that as well, but they have got rounded or whatever way they have, because the fox will be very closely related to a dog anyway, and you'd imagine they would take parvo, but it never seems to have affected them down the years. They probably have an adaptability to adapt to these things. I don't know what way they do it, but they have adapted. We are bringing in a new system. Maybe we're trying to get a new app going for all our bag returns is our woodcock, our game, but we will also be doing it for the vermin. And it would maybe satisfy what you just said there, to give you a strong indication
what's the population
what
dynamic.
The populations are, what the populations are being taken. And in relation to the game now, we could do it in relation to vermin as well. You could say what you've seen as well. We will be saying it in relation to game. Say if you went out and you shot 3 woodcock but you saw 10, you'll be putting down saw 10, shot 3, And obviously then our boys give in the wings as well for testing. We send the wings away to identify the juveniles, or see that helps to indicate how well they're breeding. If there's a higher proportion of juveniles, it says they're breeding well, even though they may have bred in Russia or wherever they came from.
No, you're talking about woodcock.
I'm talking about woodcock. But I mean, it's all part of the research which we're involved in as well, by the way, that trying to find out where we're at, and where we're likely to go,
And do you maintain like a database of because I know I'm getting like a booklet every year, and there is a section that you can send with the returns.
The bag return,
the bag return. And so do you guys maintain like a database and then look at the data in it, or is it just got fed into the National Biodiversity Database? Or you're separate?
No, we're separate. Okay. Would we have recommended to our members to use that national in relation to all animals to see when they're out?
Yes.
Just to to help that along, But no, that thing, our own bag return is separate.
Okay.
We have used it for years. That's been going on for years. Now, we have had a problem trying to get members to fill it because they tend to, they get it in their magazine and they can also get it online if they look at our website.
Yeah.
But fellas don't, for a couple of reasons. If fellas have a good spot for woodcock, for instance, they don't like maybe... they're afraid that the word will get out. There's a lot of woodcock here, and everyone from around the country will come. So there is a bit of.
But they can put as vague of the location as they want, like County Kerry.
We've been telling them that it won't be disclosed where they're shot. We'll just say Munster, there was some Annie or Kerry. It'll be a wide area. It won't be specific to where they're shot.
Yeah, exactly.
Because they are afraid that someone will say, "Oh, a lot of woodcock in wherever."
Yeah,
in Mullingar, we'll head to Mullingar next Sunday. That's the problem.
So if you're listening to this and you see your bag return and NARGC bag return laying on your table, just get that thing and send it up. And
we've been pushing this for the last couple of years because there is a requirement as well under the Birds Directive.
Yeah,
to put in bag returns. It was voluntary up to now, but from this year onwards, the Irish government have to put in a bag return to the EU.
Okay.
Under the Birds Directive, I think it's Section 12 of the Birds Directive. It is mandatory from now on. So that's why we are at the moment as well trying to get an app up and running for our members to make it easier, particularly for the younger members, and that when they're out, if they shoot a bird, they just click it and you'll have the location.
I must say that even by browsing your website, and now you're talking about the app that you try to get it running, like it looks good. I was kind of expecting to see like an antiquated website that nothing is happening for a long time, but I was pleasantly surprised by the amount of information I can find on the website. So.
It is a bit old. We are currently looking at setting up a new one with a lot of new attachments like I've described there to you, because we are trying to bring our members a sign-in area for our members as well, that they'll be able to go on and sign in and
check their status, membership status, and so
maybe on. There will be discounts for certain things as well, for some vermin equipment and that kind of stuff. It'll be all stuff to do with our business as such, and not anything else. But there will be a sign-in area like that hopefully before too long. We are we're fairly advanced looking at it at the minute. So
that's good news.
Yeah.
Okay, Dan, let's talk about woodcock. So what are they? So maybe just for the purpose of our listeners, because like maybe some of them don't even know what the woodcock is. So can you just lay it out to us? Like what is the woodcock? What is the tradition of hunting, and what are the issues around that?
Well, woodcock is a middle-sized bird. What size is it now?
Like the size of a pigeon?
Yeah, a little bit smaller than a pigeon, maybe similar to a snipe if you're familiar with a snipe, but about maybe 6 times the size of a snipe, roughly 5 or 6 times the size of a snipe. Very similar, long beak, an ungainly looking kind of a creature, but a very fascinating creature in an awful lot of ways. Same colour as a snipe, that kind of brown with some very, very lovely brownish feathers in them. A really nice bird. A bird that's cryptic, some of the experts call them, because even though everyone knows a certain amount about them, no one can really put their finger on a lot of the stuff they do, particularly around the breeding season. People are there's a thing called the rodent, and no one is really sure what they're at. It is obviously a courtship or a mating process, but the male seems to fly around, and he'll do this, what they call rodent. This is during April, May, June, and he's obviously talking to females on the ground, but the theory is that he's a bit promiscuous, that he's not tied to any particular female, that if she calls back, he'll go down and visit her or whatever, and that the female may be more. A lot of birds, as we know, have territories, what we call territories. And the theory is that the female may hold the territory with a woodcock, but it's not. Yeah. There is little or nothing known about. For instance, your grey crow or magpie, they all have territories during the breeding season. That's why you see the famous 2 magpies together. Yeah. They're territorial. Yeah. Nearly every bird is territorial, but the woodcock is something different. No one rightly can just put their full finger on it. So they are a cryptic bird. They're known as European woodcock. Eurasian, woodcock. We have
also when you see the cow like a excrement and those kind of like a holes in it. That's woodcock. That's
woodcock. Yeah,
I didn't know that, but I saw this, and then I saw a footage from the trail cam. Like a woodcock is working on, and it's like, oh, so that's what I didn't know. I didn't know that. It's fascinating, and I'm sure a lot of people seeing this. Yeah. And they have no idea that this is like a little bird that does these holes.
They will normally be at the bottom, at the soft mud in the bottom of a drain, because they have their beak would be maybe 3.5 inches long. So what they do is they put the beak down into soft mud or that, and they're able to get little crustaceans and stuff down in the mud. Yeah. That's what they feed on. Yeah. Invariably, hunting them, you'll get them along little soft, where there's a stream running down the bottom of a drain or anywhere. Usually there's bare clay or somewhere where they can pick at the clay. You usually won't get them in where there's a lot of grass. Usually they like a clay surface, either the muddy at the bottom of a river or a muddy area, maybe under blackthorns or whitethorns. Sometimes you can get them where the clay is exposed. But they are, as I said, a fascinating bird, a very, very elusive bird. We have a native woodcock who breed here and stay here the whole year.
Oh, okay.
And we have the migratory woodcock.
Okay.
Now, a lot of people confuse this because during the winter time you go out, and if you're in a good area for a good natural habitat area, you could be seeing a lot of woodcock rising. But there's an opinion as to what the percentage is, but the percentage will be overwhelmingly native, overwhelmingly migratory that have come in. And they usually come in from Russia. That they can come from anywhere, but it's all that cold area, Siberia, the whole way from Latvia, the whole way across Europe. For instance, a couple of years ago, they tagged a couple of woodcock here in Ireland. They tagged one in Cork, and he flew to Latvia. Yeah. And they tagged one in Galway, he flew to St. Petersburg or near St. Petersburg in Russia. Wow. And ironically, even though they're actually a slow flyer, they're regarded as, I think I saw a quiz somewhere where said they're the slowest flying bird in Ireland.
Wow.
But it's where they're flying that makes them difficult. They're always flying in and out through trees and, you know. But when they went back to Russia, they were flying somewhere around 1,600 kilometres a day.
Wow.
They went back in about 3 days, and that surprised a lot of people because everyone thought they'd only fly maybe 100 mile or two and then pull down and have a rest and go again. Yeah. But no, they fly long distance at times. So they're very, very, very fascinating bird. Obviously the native one is here. They would breed. Now there was a survey done by Birdwatch about 4 or 5 years ago, maybe, that said there was they said the native woodcock were in serious danger at the time. Yeah. That there was no native woodcock in, I think it was 14 or 16 of the counties. Yeah. Now that has been proved wrong.
Can you tell easily whether it's a native or migratory bird, or is it like some sort of a genetic analysis?
They're the same if you caught them during the winter time.
Just the same bird.
Thing. But the only thing, if you rise a woodcock in from maybe April, May onwards,
then it's a native.
It's a native, yeah. They're here, yeah. Sometimes when you're going down maybe feeding pheasants or something, you see a woodcock getting up. That is a native one, you know. Yeah. But the Birdwatch survey kind of found that, or they came back with that they were in dire straits. The native one was in dire straits, you know. And but since that, we have done surveys ourselves, and they're not now they're not overly plentiful. And as I said, probably of all the woodcock in the winter time that'll be here, you're probably talking about 90% migratory or maybe more. Yeah, like the vast majority of them are migratory that have come in, you know. But just at the minute we're doing. We have a PhD student doing research on them. He's in UCL, a fellow called James O'Neill. Okay. If any of your listeners want to Google Woodcock project in Ireland, it's very interesting, and he had us doing these. In fact, he wants volunteers as well in Mayor to listen to the woodcock rodent, to do a wood or somewhere in your area. And see, can you see this fella rodent? You know, and then you obviously know they're in the area. Yeah. But it's been going on for last year and this year. Now, his findings have been quite good. He has only 1 year's findings yet, but he said that there's woodcock in most counties in the Republic. Not so good, funny enough, in Northern Ireland for some reason that he just can't put his finger on. Yeah. But the woodcock number, the native woodcock numbers is quite good.
Yeah, and this is like a very traditional game bird as well, woodcock. So there's a big tradition of does that tradition came from anything specific? Because like the bird is like a small bird, so I would imagine that from the perspective of eating that meat, it's not particularly compelling, or maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it has like a fantastic, tasting flesh. I don't know. I'm just wondering, whether it's just a sport of shooting bird in its own, or is it something behind it?
Well, there'd be something behind it. The meat is very prized meat on a woodcock. Mm-hmm. For instance, we had a problem about 5 or 7 years ago where woodcock was being sold, being exploited. They were being sold to dealers, and they are a delicacy in a lot of restaurants, particularly in France. And some of the big chefs in Ireland, without giving any names, were also, had them on the menu, and they are a prized bird and for their meat. So there was a problem with that. So at the time, the national parks did come in and say they banned the sale of woodcock.
Yes,
that you can't sell woodcock, which was great at the time from our point of view, because there was a number of dealers coming around.
I think it's always when the animal is in a decline and it has a value for you can sell to the restaurants, and at the same time you don't have regulation over shooting, then it usually means problem. The reason I'm asking that, I've seen not long ago, a couple of days ago, I've seen a photo of the guys were hunting woodcock in Denmark, I think. Right, and there was like a few of those birds lying. I'm thinking like, well, they're migratory bird. This is this small bird, what I'm gonna say now is unpopular. It's gonna be controversial. Someone is giving out to me, but my honest a feeling was like, whoa, it's it's a pity. Those little birds is like not much food, not much eating. And they're in the decline. It's like I would probably not go shooting woodcock, but that's me. That's just my personal opinion. So what are the problems? So the population is declining.
The native population was, but we think it is stable. Now this is what the PhD is doing for 4 years.
Oh, okay. So that's the proper science.
Proper science, proper science, and we have contributed. I think it's 8,000 a year for 5 years into this. A number of other people have come into it, including the British Game Conservancy are in it. There's 6 or 7. Birdwatch are with us on that as well. We have meetings with the national parks people, and there's a whole core plus people from the university in Cork. Yeah. Where this man is excellent, actually, that James O'Neill man. Yeah. And I would appeal to any of your listeners to go onto that Woodcock site. He is a real
I try to get him on a podcast.
Dude, get him on a podcast, yeah.
I'm trying to get him on the podcast and explore a little bit of the woodcock.
He might even take you out. Mm-hmm. He's licensed to catch birds and tag them as well. Wow. And he spent all last winter and half the summer. If I rang him up and said I have a couple of woodcock on, and James would be there the following night to tag them. He's a really get up and go fella, a really good fella, yeah. Awesome. He's attached to Cork University. He's from Northern Ireland. He's from Portadown area, but he's a real top fella, this guy. And I'll say his findings have been very good, and hopefully he will say, and he is saying it, he has said it so far, that they're not, they're not falling out of the rafters. Mm-hmm. The native woodcock is good. But then I suppose if we go on to the migratory one, the migratory ones are very, very common. Like they would a lot of migratory birds come in here,
Because there's always the most difficult to conserve the birds that are animals in general that are migratory, because you can put a regulation on one area and then the bird flies somewhere else and then get hammered over there because there's no regulation. And then the people who are, living in the area when you have a regulation, it's like, whoa, why don't we have we have a bag limit and we have a restriction and we have all that, and then the damn bird goes fly to Russia or somewhere else, and they're just, it's like, fair game to anyone. So it's always hard.
That is a problem with all migratory, and there's another subject we might come on to in a minute, and a similar problem where, particularly here, the migratory ones come here for the milder winter, and then they don't actually breed here. They breed back in Russia or Latvia or wherever they go back to, and obviously we have no control over the population, or that you can't do a conservation project that might help them to breed or something. So on another subject, we'll come on to in relation to ducks. There is 7 European countries have joined together in relation to ducks.
Okay, please, let's just jump
that,
yeah. Let's just jump.
No, there's 7 countries. They call it the wild get the waterfowlers network. It's Denmark, Finland, Germany, Sweden, Netherlands, UK, and ourselves have all got together and put in some money into this, and it's based. I don't know, your listeners may be familiar with Ducks Unlimited in America.
Yeah,
it's the same principle.
Well, I'm familiar. I don't know if my listeners are familiar, but I'm familiar with Ducks Unlimited. Yeah,
it's same principle in that the ducks come down from Canada or down to Central America.
Yeah,
they're just migrating there. They're not breeding there. So the Americans contribute money to try conserve the breeding areas up. In other words, to work with the Canadians or wherever the breeding grounds are to try and
protect them where they're breeding. Yeah.
Try to get them to breed better. That they're more. And the ducks we're talking about here is like a widgeon, teal, pochard, the gadwall, the tufted ducks. The widgeon used to be the big one here. They come from. No one is rightly sure to know they come from somewhere around there, but northern Finland, there's some big breeding grounds obviously the breeding grounds across Russia, but we would hope that this project, we will start tagging ducks in the next couple of years and try and maybe radio tag a few ducks as well, just to see where say for the widgeon, maybe that's down on the Shannon around Limerick or wherever, try to find out where they're coming from. Are they coming from Latvia, are they coming from Russia, or where they're coming from, and try and follow. Some of these ducks have gone down a bit in numbers as well, so there is a need to have a good management plan around them as well. Try and work out which way they're going, and should we maybe reduce shooting on them if need be for a while, or whatever. Whatever it takes to make sure, because no one wants to see any species getting wiped out or even getting into bad state of repairs. So. That is the kind of thing that thing started maybe 2 years ago. Them 7 countries, and we've been at 2 meetings with them, and it will develop. But initially we were talking about maybe doing a fair bit of tagging for the first couple of years to try and work out flight paths of where they're coming from, and then try and maybe develop the breeding sites, and that would say them 7 countries, bar Finland, maybe would all be recipients of ducks. So. We be contributing money towards wherever the breeding grounds are to try and conserve the ducks there. So it's a kind of what you were saying there a minute ago. That's exactly.
Well, Dan, I must say that it is super positive, all what you're saying. I mean, I even want to mention at the beginning. So now I'm going to mention that even like a NARGC is like a sort of a special organization, because even like if you have those insurance cards, I get it from, they're so beautiful. There's a like, you would imagine that you will get like a piece of cardboard, but they're so nice. I'm collecting them. I'm keeping them because it's like a collectible item. Like, look at this. So you're putting a lot of effort to all this stuff. There's a lot of people working on it, right?
There is. We have the cards have been going down long. They've gone maybe 15 years. I don't know whether you have 15 or not.
No, I don't have a 15. I have 3.
3, yeah. They have
no, maybe 4 or 3, something like single digits.
The NRGC probably it's a bit special organisation in a way, and not because I'm chairman of saying it, but unlike maybe other European hunting organisations, we're very much everyone involved. You could have the wealthiest man in a parish, you could have the man maybe on social welfare, or the man with very little money in the parish. You'd have the farmer, you could have the plumber, you could have, we're just all over the place.
That's awesome, man, because that's like an epitome of what being outdoors and being hunter is. Like let's unite people.
It does unite people, and down the years, with the troubles and all the rest of it in the north down the years, it crosses all the divides as well. There never has had a problem crossing the divides, Catholic, Protestant. In fact, there's an awful lot of clubs, including my own, there'd be a great mix of all the different religions in them as well. That has never been an issue with the gun clubs down the years, even along the border, even in Northern Ireland, for instance.
But the question is, do you have vegans on?
Not that I'm sure there is someone. If I say there isn't, someone will probably ring up and say there are. But not that vegan, of course, is a fairly modern phenomenon.
I heard about a fella who is a hunter, but he's a vegan.
I've heard.
Like how does that work?
Yeah,
it's just
like there's one thing about Ireland, you'll always get contradictions.
Yeah.
And I recall someone, I think it was a birdwatch person, and they were a very big hunter as well.
Yeah.
So
I'm not surprised about that.
No, it's probably not, because people, when
Yeah, that's what I mentioned at the beginning, right? That you're expecting, like if you're a member of certain organization, you're expected to have a certain point of view.
Yeah, you're stuck in that column there. And someone else in this column. But
exactly,
Ireland, and I've seen this in different walks of life in Ireland. Irish people tend to be all over the place, when there could be extreme here, there could be there could be in a counter organisation here, that's the way. I don't know what it is about Irish people, but they tend to be that way,
Yeah.
But the NARGC as an organisation, we have embraced everyone down the years, thankfully, and I hope it always continues. Like for instance, in some countries, shooting that is seen as an elitist sport.
Yeah.
And there'll be very little driven shooting, which tends to be the elite end of shooting anyway.
Yes.
There's very little of that. Like our organisation is all the fellas in the parish, the release pin, the lack of woodcock, if they have if the woodcock coming in, if they have a good water, the lack of ducks coming in, or they're native, they may raise a few mallard themselves or whatever.
Yeah.
It's very much the local effort for the local people. It's a giant effort for the local people, and that's the way it always has been.
It's fantastic. It's very optimistic. Listen, Dan, so let's get into the subject of the lead and the EU, right? This is really something we discussed a lot. And the last time we spoke, you sent me some materials. I'm going to refer my listeners and all you listeners now to Tommy's Outdoors YouTube channel one more time. I made like a 3 or 4 part video series about that, outlining what the issue is, what's the timeline, potential timeline around that, can it be stopped, and then I gave my own opinion. So it was like a 4 parts of it. So just to briefly explain to people who maybe not listen to that, and Dan, please interrupt me and correct me if I'm wrong, but there are certain organizations like a chemical agency in the EU, and they have a consultation period that lead is considered substance that is harmful. And after that consultation period, everything goes to the essentially banning lead shots on the wetlands. There's issue with the definition of the wetland, because that essentially will mean that the entire countries are treated as a wetland. And then further down the road, that ban will most likely be expanded to all ammunition, all shooting, including sport shooters, and probably further even down the line, even fishing tackle. So your lead sinkers will be gone, right? So obviously there's a lot of pushback and there's a lot of controversy around that. At the time when I looked at it last time, we were talking about somewhere realistically year 2024 where this can be implemented. Please share with us the latest, or maybe correct me if I'm wrong with anything that I said, if I was incorrect, so please do correct me, and then tell us where it is now and what's going on right now.
Yes, it is complicated, so I'll try and simplify it as well as I can.
Sure.
You're right about it all, but it is the one there's 3 elements to this lead shot in relation to the European Commission and the European Chemicals Agency. There was first the original one that they started off was lead shot over wetlands, which is obviously they were saying ducks get poisoned from it. That's the reason for it. So lead shot is obviously shotguns over wetlands. And of course there was 24 of the 28 countries had some sort of a restriction already from the European Eurasian Water Boards Agreement, the AEWA agreement as it's known as. Ireland was one of the 4 that hadn't anything. So, but that particular, I
think that Ireland, Poland, Lithuania, and Romania were not.
Yeah, I think that's the 4. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's the 4. Now, some of the other countries, even though they technically had something in place, it wasn't
enforced.
Yeah, or it was a bit of a fob off, or whatever word you want to use. I won't name names, but there was, and it's well recorded on Google and different things of non-compliance. And I know some of the other people say it's non-compliance, but I think hunters were doing it for a reason, in that steel wasn't cutting the mustard. You know what I mean? And lead was, and they knew if one thing drives a shooting man mad is hitting a bird and the bird flying on.
Yes.
And then the bird obviously dies somewhere down the road after, you know.
There's always worse, just to lose the animal.
It's one of the things people hate doing. You know what I mean? When you shoot, you like to get the bird, retrieve the bird, and you know, and the bird is dispatched cleanly and humanely, you know.
Yeah.
But that one, the lead shot over wetlands, now that has advanced fairly well at the minute, where the European Commission have eventually, this is going on since 2017 now, in a big way. There was two major public consultations on it, but eventually there, just at the end of October gone by there, the European Commission came with what they call their final opinion on it. And their final opinion is pretty draconian. It was more draconian than any of us had anticipated, even though this opinion was given out all along for the consultation purposes, you know. But what they came with eventually was that, yes, that they were going to impose it on all the countries. That was the first thing, an EU-wide ban. Secondly, if you had more than, they were going to impose it all within 18 months as well, which is a very short time when you think about it.
Within 18 months.
Within 18 months.
So it's 2021.
Yeah, we're not there yet.
Okay.
But
sorry.
Then their opinion was going to what they call the REACH committee.
Yes.
And the REACH committee is basically, it's a representative from each of the 28 countries. They're a civil servant, but in our case, it's a person from the Health Safety Authority in Ireland. But they vary around the EU countries, but it's one person from the 28. So and basically, this was being decided under a policy called comitology, which means them 28 people vote on it. And if to get it for it to be blocked, it had to be 35% against it, but it had to be at least 4 countries.
Yes.
So that means there had to be a couple of big countries involved in it, because, for instance, Ireland is only 0.9% of the EU. Ireland hasn't even 1% of the EU, the population-wise. So, but they came with their opinion, as I said, was draconian. They said originally we all thought they were half saying 3 years was the time, but they came 18 months. But then they said you could have if you had more than 20% wetlands. And now this is wetlands under, I think, called the Ramsar definition.
Yes. Which
includes peatlands, any kind of marshy ground, any kind of, in fact, it goes as far as to say any ground that ever flooded.
Yes.
So in Ireland, as you know and I know, there's not too many areas that didn't flood at some time.
Yeah.
So, conservatively, we were saying all along, that could be as much as 80% of Ireland.
Yeah.
But anyway, they came with this opinion saying if a country had more than 20% of wetlands, which Ireland clearly has, you could impose a full ban on lead shot. In other words, lead shot could be used nowhere. But then you had 3 years to do that. They were going to give you 3 years to do that.
Yeah.
So again, this is draconian stuff. This wasn't mentioned anywhere along the way.
Does that make effectively a lead shot an illegal item to possess?
Yeah, if it goes ahead, yeah. If it's voted in and it goes ahead, that's what it means. It means you cannot use lead shot. A dealer couldn't sell it. You couldn't buy it. You can't. The farmer shooting a fox coming into his yard, even though.
But they were even proposing to the possession is
that's still there as well.
That's still there. That you even give it, I have in my pocket I have a cocaine, and the other I have a lead shot. Right, it's like, Jesus.
That's still there, yeah. And they came up with another one as well, which was turned down in some of the consultations, that there would be a buffer zone of 400 meters around the wetland.
Okay.
So in other words. Well, obviously, in Ireland's case, if they did go for all, that's gone anyway. But in any other place, you couldn't go within 500 meters came up with, of a wetland. So in other words, it was crazy stuff. So now there was a meeting of this REACH committee I'm on about just on the 19th of November, just gone by there.
Yes.
After obviously looking at this new proposal from the EU.
Yeah.
There was a fair bit of opposition to it. At least 7 countries rose objections to it, including Ireland.
Yeah.
And a number of other countries said they hadn't formed an opinion on it yet, or they hadn't discussed it enough at home.
Yeah.
So there is opposition to it.
Yes.
Now, they didn't make any decision. They just talked about it, and they're supposed to talk about it again at a REACH meeting in February. So that's where it is. Now, we are liaising here in Ireland. We're liaising with the National Parks and Wildlife Service, who's kind of the relevant body on this, and plus in the health safety authorities, the REACH person is from there. Now we've met them three times already, and They are, and we are actually talking to them today about sending in the European Commission. We're looking for submissions from governments on this. They wanted by the 16th, which is next week, is it, or the week after?
Yes.
On it, so we hope to put in a submission again on that to them. So that's what the lead shot one is. It is pretty advanced. There is opposition to it,
but so in other words, we still don't know what's going to happen, because they come out with a like a much more draconian proposal or opinion. But then, like you said, there's many countries who are still opposing it. So we're none the wiser.
We're not really, Tommy. No, it's not clear cut. And in Ireland's case, we don't have a proof house here in Ireland. So I mean, and guns, all our old guns are all proof for lead. Nearly all, I'd say there's only maybe a couple of % of guns would be proof for steel, and particularly for high grade steel.
Really?
Yeah.
So is it not like all the new shotguns or can shot the steel shots as well?
A good few of them would, yes, but steel shot, high performance steel shot is a 3.5-inch cartridge. It's a longer chamber than your standard chamber.
Okay.
It's simply to give you the kind of distance you have with lead.
Okay.
Because ordinary normal steel has very limited distance. You might have only you wouldn't shoot a duck past 25 yards.
Yes.
You know, and probably a bit less than that even, you know. So, you know, for instance, see where farmers are going to be really caught with this, because they have their guns really for vermin protection.
Yeah.
So they'd want to be able to shoot a crow, a fox, maybe a dog if he was attacking sheep or something of that nature. So they want a gun that has, you know, the gun I'm describing that would shoot normal steel wouldn't literally tickle a fox.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So they will need they will need and unfortunately one of these guns will probably cost somewhere around €1,500.
Yeah.
So for the farmer has a shotgun there that'll do the job now. To change over to steel, he's going to have to go for a new gun. Yes. Probably somewhere in the region of €1,500 to use these 3.5-inch steel cartridges, you know. So that's what the big thing. And unfortunately, I would think farmers' guns, 95% of them are going to fall into that category. You're talking about 100,000 guns or thereabouts, you know. Yeah. So there's going to be serious scrappage of guns if this goes ahead in Ireland, because simply.
So I suppose the problem is with the timelines where it's going to happen, right? Like 18 months, even 3 months is because, you know, I always draw the parallel to unleaded fuel, right? Unleaded petrol. Yeah. It was kind of like a similar thing that it was like all of a sudden people decide, like not all of a sudden, but they decided, you know, we're gonna do away with lead and petrol, and then there was these engines that were running on unleaded fuel, and there was like, oh, they have less power, and they gonna, you know, the catalyst, you know, will clog up, and like, oh, whatever, this is bad. And like we're like right now, I guess most of the young people, there's like on the petrol stations, a D for diesel. What is a U for petrol? Why is not P? U, right? They don't even know it's unleaded. So I think that over time, it's gonna kind of, we're gonna get
no
over
doubt
it.
It would over time, but to see there is steel doesn't do what lead does. Steel is not as good, or not near as good.
But is it just because nobody was developing steel cartridges and nobody was developing shotguns that are shooting steel? So we kind of like presented with that new thing as like, oh, but the guns that we have and ammunition that we have are not performing that good. Well, sure, because for the past 20 years, nobody was developing them.
There's a bit of that. Now, it would have been developed. There is a couple of countries have switched over to steel. Denmark being one of them, and Netherlands. They have done it for 20 years, or
really?
It's been going on for 20 years. Yeah.
Oh.
But it's still not. Steel is not as good. Simple as that. Plus, the second problem with steel is ricochet. Steel is a ball bearing, and if it hits anything hard.
Yes,
it's going to bounce off. While lead will ricochet as well, but lead tends to flatten when it hits something hard. It will ricochet, but not as bad.
Yeah, it will absorb the energy and flatten.
Yeah, exactly.
And is the steel the only material that can be used? What about copper? Because I know, like for shooting rifle.
Yeah, there's mixtures of copper and lead, and there's variations. Yeah, they can. There's tungsten was used for lead shot, or for shot, I should say, and bismuth
Yeah.
Bismuth is ferociously expensive.
Oh yeah, because the
bismuth could be 7 years a cartridge or something of that nature,
Wow.
And it is a fairly rare metal.
Exactly.
It's got somewhere in Siberia, I think, or somewhere.
Yeah.
I'd imagine if it starts being used a lot, the price will probably go up as well,
Yeah. Imagine the guy who sits on that mine and this is like his land. He just like goes like, bring it on.
And of course, what we don't know is it toxic or...
Well, exactly. Are you not replacing one toxic substance with another even more toxic substance?
And even with steel, while steel mightn't cause the problem with the duck's gizzards, steel almost certainly will cause problems with water quality. Because it rusts very quickly.
It rusts.
Steel disintegrates within 10 years, I reckon. That's, if you dropped a pellet there now, it'll be gone in 10 years.
Yeah.
And of course, it is washing into the waterways or wherever, while lead, when it landed on the ground, it doesn't tend to, lead doesn't, bar in very acidy ground or something, it wouldn't deteriorate at all. It just sinks back into the ground more or less and disappears. Lead doesn't.
I heard that argument, but anyone who had a lead sinker knows that if you drop it to a water, it kind of changes, very quickly, kind of oxidizes and...
Yeah, in acid, maybe in bog or in acidy ground, it can, but generally speaking, lead doesn't change. Say in solid, in grass or in grassland, lead doesn't.
So the argument is that the ducks are eating that lead and getting lead poisoning from that? Not that the lead is in the environment, or the argument is that the lead is in the environment.
No. In relation to the lead shot over wetlands, the reason it's over wetlands is ducks were picking it up, and a duck has a gizzard to break down its food.
Yeah.
And the theory was that the lead was getting into the gizzard, and the duck was breaking down the lead as well, which it will happen because it's a grinding. The gizzard is a grinding mechanism for breaking up.
They swallowing the stones and other things.
They naturally take in stone to use as a kind of a sandpaper. That's nature. That's the way it works. And that the theory was they're taking in the lead as well. That the duck dabbling in particularly shallow water would pick it up and take it in. Now, we would argue a bit that while he will take it up, that in Ireland it's not a problem at all, because we did a survey only last shooting season where we did the gizzards of 1,200 or just short of 1,200 ducks, and 21 ducks had one pellet in them off that 1,200, and everyone agrees one pellet doesn't do them any harm anyway, like they'll have to have a couple of pellets at least to do any harm.
They're probably getting more harm just flying over the road and inhaling all the diesel fumes than that one pellet in their gizzard.
It's definitely not a problem here. It may be a problem where there's intensive shooting going on somewhere. If you had an estuary or something of that nature where there's an awful lot of shooting going on, traditionally a lot of shooting going on.
Yes.
That the duck, particularly if the water is shallow water then as well, that the duck is paddling there and picking up a lot of lead there. But that in our shooting, as you know, where there's deep water, obviously the lead is going down too deep. The only place you get it maybe is along the edge or shallow, somewhere is shallow water.
Yeah.
And we've asked this since this came up a couple of years ago. We asked all our members, have any ever seen a duck that you thought died from lead poisoning? And no one can ever.
How would you recognize it?
Well, that's another. Well, we have got ducks, for instance, after the Chernobyl. We have the woodcock have come with one leg and deformed from that,
Okay.
And we have, the bird flu thing a couple of years ago. We would have got snipe and different birds dead from that.
Yeah.
Like we would have found birds dead from.
Was there like a necropsy done on those birds?
There would have been, yeah.
Oh, okay.
We used to hand them into the department. No, they came back some other time and said that they hadn't died from it. We think they did, to be honest, because we can't. Because normally you don't find that many birds when you're out shooting. I know fellas found snipe with the bird flu, and sometimes they weren't dead. They were practically dead,
Yeah.
And on one or two occasions they came back saying it wasn't bird flu. I would be inclined to think it was, I don't know, but
okay. But they were like a properly tested.
Yeah, they were. We would always take them in if we get them anyway, just because you always want to know what's going on in case there's something new that we don't know about,
Exactly.
But lead shot, no one can ever say, no one. Obviously, we don't know for sure. You don't know, but it never seems to have been a problem.
No, it never
seems to be a problem here. And there was a survey done back in, I think it was 81 or 82. by Dr. Douglas Butler at the time, who was a shooting man from Tipperary, but he'd been a scientist as well, and he came back with something. That survey there was 1.75 of an occurrence,
Wow.
21 of 1,200. His one, I think, was about 2% of the time as well, so
Okay.
it was very low then as well, so. And we don't, as I say, we're doing another survey just at the minute on this present shooting season that's in at the minute. And hopefully we'll have the results of that next year, after obviously the season closes. But we don't see it as a problem. So it's very hard to tell our members, you have to give up your lead and you have to give up, get a new shotgun, and farmers and everyone else over this when no one can see it on the ground that there is a problem,
Yeah, exactly. Is there any talk then to getting rid of lead in any ammunition, including like a deer hunting and so on?
Yeah, I'm just coming to that.
All right, sorry. I'm like, great, please.
The European Commission and the ECHA have just started, and this is maybe one for your listeners now and for everyone. They've started what they call the restriction process on that thing. It's all lead in shooting and fishing, right? So you're talking about your all bullets, be the air rifles, anything in shooting that uses lead, and fishing. Yeah. And they've just started it there. They flagged this last year, but they actually started it. They're looking at what they call for submissions on evidence. So they're kind of saying if you can come in with some evidence of, But I would appeal to all your listeners maybe to. By the way, this submission or this consultation, it closes on the 16th of December, which is not that far away. It's only a fortnight roughly, isn't it?
Yep.
And
2 weeks.
So if any, I'd appeal to all you to get onto the ECHA website. You can go in there, and now it's a little bit cumbersome to get onto, but you can go on. It has to be done online as well. The submission has to be done online.
Yeah.
They ask 5 questions on it, but you can also attach documents or that kind of thing as well on a section. But the problem is, if you go into it and you leave it, you lose it. So you have to go. You'd want some of your answers. You'd want to look at the answers first and have them pasted or have them done. That you can just paste them across.
Yes.
Because if you go in and you do an hour and then the wife rings you to go for whatever, and you leave it, you've lost it all. You've lost what you've done. So you need to have it. Maybe have your answers done and ready to paste across, or something of that nature. Yeah. But they're basically asking, at the minute they call this an evidence call, so they're looking for evidence, but it would be important that people go in. Obviously, you're talking, the big problem here on this one is there is no alternative ammunition for anything under a 223. So a 223 is quite a large rifle, generally used as for shooting foxes. Be one of the most common rifles in Ireland for shooting foxes. Yeah. But the most common rifle in Ireland by a mile would be the ordinary 22 or the variations of the 22.
I would thought that 308 would be the most popular.
Traditionally, an awful lot of people would have 22s now.
Yeah. Like 22 250.
Yeah, well, they would be the bigger
version.
But a lot of people would have the original 22 for shooting rabbits or that kind of thing. That's what a lot of people would have started with. There'd be a lot of them, and they would be the most common one, I'd say. The 308s is more deer rifle, isn't it? Yeah. They would be good for them, but no, the 22 would be the big one. But under this, there is no alternative ammunition, so they're all for the scrap heap if this goes ahead.
Well, like California. Like I remember that when I was doing those videos this 6 months ago, there was exactly on the day where California imposed like a total ban on ammunition. Yeah. So I would imagine that a lot of manufacturers of ammunition this ammunition will start to popping up. I'm just trying to be on a positive note that you can buy the deer hunting ammunition, which is copper ammunition, 308, 30-06 is 270s. So I would imagine that more and more that push to get rid of lead will be going ahead, the more of the ammunition manufacturers will be developing that ammunition. So, what I said, so absolutely, and because I don't know if that podcast will be out before the 16th, I'm going to just put that snippet that you just said about going to the ECHA website and submit that just to reach people and give them opportunity to do that. But the other thing that I said was like, when you and your local gun shop ask about non-lead ammunition. Just ask about like just demand, because these people will then ask their suppliers, and that well, we're gonna build a demand. So whether it's gonna be 3 years or 5 years or 10 years, it seems like it's gonna happen, doesn't it?
Well, it does on that one, but I mean, for shooting something like a rabbit.
Yeah.
Or small.
Have like an expensive copper ammunition.
Yeah. Plus, you're using a very big caliber thing to shoot them as well. While a 22.
Oh yeah, I'm assuming that we will have copper 22s by then. Hopefully.
I know. I was at one of the meetings, and some of the manufacturers were there.
Yeah.
The Fieschi from Italy were there. Actually, one of them Fieschi's himself was there.
Yeah.
And he said there is no alternative ammunition, or no one has anything in the pipeline either.
Mm-hmm.
Now, someone from Denmark was at a recent meeting, and they said they had something.
Yeah.
But it's a local Denmark thing, I think. And Denmark don't use standards. They don't seem to have any standards over there at all in relation to... No,
I think that when the Americans get on that, the federals, the SACO, maybe not American, but like SACO, the federal...
Finland or something.
Finland, right?
Yeah.
Like Hornady. Once those big names get onto that...
They may come with it, but no one has anything at the minute on it. They don't seem to have... And
they should.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a problem.
Copper, of course, may be toxic as well, don't forget.
Yeah. And it's damn expensive, I'm telling you.
Yeah, it's expensive. And
it's a $40 and a box of ammunition, €40.
Yeah, and most people will still say lead does it probably the best all the time,
Yeah.
And there is, people talk about meat, but there is countermeasure. You don't use the track of the bullet, or there is ways of treating the animal that you're not using the lead.
Yeah.
But again, it's obviously the rifling and all that is affected as well. Lead easily rifles and all the rest of it. I'm not an expert on rifles now, but for instance, if they go to steel is never as accurate with a rifle, and the rifling, you need a different rifle, I think, to use steel as well, So
I don't know.
A lot of the traditional rifles that were obviously made for lead won't work.
Maybe
they have to be changed. There may be some of them more expensive ones, maybe worth boarding out and redoing. I'm not sure. Can it be done?
It seems like for rifle is less of the problem, because you kind of have the same case and the same bullet.
Yeah.
So like I'm using like a lead ammunition, obviously, for target practice and so on. And when I specifically go hunting, I'm using this copper ammunition because it's a meat for the consumption. Like you said, but that's just my preference. Like I decided to do that. But like like a first animal that I shot with the lead ammunition, and I ate it, and I'm here.
So are a lot of people. You're back to it again. A lot of people have done it all their lives, and they can't see anything wrong with it. And never will. But no, it's just lead does it well. Copper, obviously, all these. You see, the real fear you'd have as well is that, when they've done this, someone will come back and say, "Oh, well, copper is toxic too." That's the second problem. But probably not as big as the other one, in that there is some alternative. But it is a big problem for the smaller rifles, and as I said, there will be an awful lot of rifles scrapped in Ireland. Because I would think a 22, your ordinary little 22, which is only a little, the little cat, the little rounders in that. Yeah. It'll be very hard to get anything, because lead is so dense, and lead suits that, and probably nothing else does. I don't think. But that's as I say, that's going on. Obviously, the fishing. I'm not directly involved in fishing myself, but I assume you can get other alternatives for fishing, but lead again.
Yeah, but even like number one, you have a lot of your gear, even lures. Like if you're bass fishing on the lure, you have them weighted with the lead.
That's right. Yeah.
Granted, it's inside the lure, but still, we don't know what the ECHA will come up with. And then even if you're using like a sinkers, you're losing them, right? You're breaking off, and then you need to buy them. So like a 8-ounce piece of stainless steel has to be more expensive than 8 ounce, and the bigger.
Yeah, that's right.
The 8-ounce lead sinker, right? So a lot of things will change.
Yeah, you'd wonder. I know I was at a meeting where a fisherman was there, and he made the point you're making there. He said, there is no evidence whatsoever that these cause any problem. He said there was one size, I forget what's, one of the wee sizes you put on it's like a bit of lead shot. There was one size was found to cause a problem that some water birds did eat that. And he said, but any of the other sizes, they've never.
Yeah.
He said there was no problem whatsoever identified by anyone, expert anyone, that was causing problems. So he said he was making the point that he couldn't see the reason for changing.
How do you see this played out? Like a you know, where we know how it's gonna play out with a pessimistic hat, right?
Yeah.
I don't want you to put an optimistic hat, but like, because optimistic is like it's all gonna get scrapped and it never happened, right? But like from your experience, obviously you're very experienced and you've been around. Like how what is the most likely way it's gonna play out?
It's difficult. The second one, the first one, it's hard to know. Like the EU are hell bent on bringing in something. There's no doubt about that. They really have followed this up, you know, big time, you know. And politicians, by and large, would be thinking the way we're thinking, you know. So it is more or less the civil servants or the EU civil servants that's pushing this, you know. So it's hard to know for sure how far they'll push it, but they do seem to be pushing it at the minute, you know.
Yeah. And do you subscribe to these somehow conspiracy theories that this is all really aimed at restricting gun ownership and restricting shooters and kind of taking guns away from people rather than really about the environment? Because there's a lot of voices like that as well. Do you think there's a merit in that?
There is some merit in it, yes. There is. For instance, there's a third lead ban, if there wasn't enough. The third lead ban is a total ban on all lead in use. That's batteries, the roof of your house, everything.
Yeah.
Anything lead is used in. And that came from Sweden. Sweden proposed it to the European Commission.
Of all the countries.
Yeah. Sweden. And but it was also proposed by the Swedish Chemicals Agency. It wasn't even the Swedish government that proposed it. And the Swedish government there's a strong Green Party element there. I think the minister may be a Green minister in charge of that. And I have no doubt they have a bigger agenda, particularly them people. And they were behind these other ones as well, or partially behind some of these other ones as well. You know, and now we objected at the time because the EU law says a member state must ask them. Yeah. This is a body of a member state that asked them, the European or the Swedish Chemicals Agency. Yeah. Now the EU wouldn't go with us at the time that they did this wrong. Now that's only at a very early stage. They put that on a thing called a candidate list.
Yeah, the famous candidate list. Yeah.
Yes, and
but that in fairness, that's how it started with the lead shots.
That's how it starts with them all. Yeah,
that's a process. That's a process. It's the first step.
The next process, if they go there, which we think they will go there, is they'll put it on a thing called an authorization list. And that means if I or you or any manufacturer, anyone dealing, if you want to use lead in this case, you have to look for an authorization of the European Chemicals Agency to use it. Yeah. So they may well then come and say, we'll give it to you for the roof of the house, but we won't give it to you for making ammunition with it.
Yeah.
You know,
or that sinkers for your fishing.
Yeah, that's what we suspect will happen there, you know.
Right.
So I suppose to answer your question, there is an element behind it. We would think there is an element of anti-shooting behind this, you know. Yeah. Now, some people will argue the opposite, obviously, that there isn't, but there is a lot happening together, you know. There is.
It's always more complex, and it's like, if this is going on, then obviously anti-shooting lobby will jump on it because this is right up their alley. So it might not be like, this is the only reason this is happening, but there are people who have this agenda, and since it's happening, they're gonna be pushing that too. Right?
That's right. Yeah, there is, but. Most of us involved in this for a long time would say there is an element there, particularly that element I mentioned. They are definitely that way inclined, you know, and they were pushing a lot of these. They were pushing all these actually at some stage, you know.
So is there any chance this is not going to happen, or is it going to be like a phased out?
There is a chance it won't happen because there is a lot of opposition to it. Like even when I was talking to you before, I'm not quite sure how long ago it is, but. That time, you know,
June. I think it was July. I think that the 30th of June, California banned.
Oh, that could have been really.
I think it was like a May or June. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, one of the countries who objected to this at the meeting last week is France, for instance. So, I mean, France is a big say. They have 15% of the EU, you know.
Exactly.
I know at some of our meetings, you know, 3 or 4 of the big countries, Italy, France, Germany, were all more or less saying what we were saying. These are the hunting people now that I'm talking about. But at that REACH meeting, France objected the other day to it. France are one of the countries objecting to it. So, you know, some of the big countries are coming in. They're starting to see what this will cause, you know, and this will cause Ireland particularly a lot of problem with no proof house. You know, there will be an awful lot of guns being scrapped in Ireland over this if it goes ahead, and particularly for the intermittent user like the farmer who might only use the gun twice a year.
Exactly.
For to shoot a few crows, maybe going into his sheds, or shoot a fox maybe at lambs or at stock or whatever, or dogs maybe attacking sheep. You know, and as one farmer said to us, he mightn't shoot a box of cartridges in 3 years. Yeah. But that when he wants it, he wants it. You know what I mean? When there's something happening, he has to get it.
Exactly.
And if you're going to tell him, and there is approximately 100,000 guns in this country, in Ireland, held by farmers. They would near enough have half the guns in the country, you know. Yeah. So it is going to cost people a lot of money over something, you know, that they are not.
Yeah, because like you said, if you're shooting like a box of cartridges in 3 years, then it's like
their usage is not. Yeah, it's not polluting the world anyway. You know what I mean? Or not polluting anything. You know.
Yeah, so they're doing a lot of more other things that are polluting more than these cartridges.
Yeah, exactly. And it will be. I know the IFA were at that meeting with them, and the IFA man made that point big time. He said the wetland is the farmer's yard now is a wetland under this definition. Yeah, you know
exactly.
He said if he goes out there and there's crows flying out of his shed or something, eating the meal and you know, maybe giving disease to the cattle or whatever, and he shoots them, and he has to buy this new gun to shoot them. It's going to cost him 1,500 or whatever euros. Yeah. He says...
And the ammunition will be more expensive as well.
Says, you know, he says, will they be compensated for it? Will you give them some compensation to change over? Yeah. You know, because this is effectively a tool of their trade. This is, you know, this is not for pastime. They do this for their stock, protecting their stock and whatever, you know.
It's a tool, like you said.
Yeah. So he did make a good point on that front. Now, there was no answers, obviously. You know, the EU didn't say, we'll pay we'll pay 100,000 farmers 1,500 apiece to change their guns. You know,
I don't see this happening.
I don't see that happening. No. I don't see that one happening. You know, and then you have the second problem, particularly around yards or where there be, you know, shooting steel is a lot more dangerous because there's a lot more things steel can bounce off around the yard. There's stone, and you know, in Ireland there is a lot of natural stone anyway. Yes. And then you have maybe the yard or bits of concrete or whatever it is, you know, and if it hits that, it is going to bounce off it, you know. So you have them problems as well, you know.
So really, we're waiting till February.
We wait till February, that's where it is at the minute. But I say if your listeners could engage with that, because the more people that engage with it, let them know and try. I suppose your listeners want to kind of put look at their own guns in their own cabinet and say, will my guns pass here, and my guns for the scrap heap as well, you know? Yeah. And that's, I suppose, the test of it, you know. Yeah. And if they, you know, if they can judge, and when they're doing the submission, if they say I have 4 guns or my club has 10 guns and only 2 of them will shoot steel or whatever, you know, that means the other 8 men have to go and change their guns, costing whatever, you know. Yeah. It brings it down to reality, what it's going to cost on the ground to people on a club or on an individual basis, for that matter, you know.
Exactly.
You know.
Okay. Listen, Dan. So we're gonna be wrapping this up. Is there anything?
There's one more thing.
Yes, exactly. This is what I'm asking. Please.
There's one more thing.
Sure.
The Irish government brought in what they call a statutory instrument. A statutory instrument is law, basically. It transposes EU law into Irish law.
Yes.
They brought in one there on I think it was the 2nd of August, just gone by, and it became law a month later on the 1st of September, which is obviously a big day for shooting people. It's when the duck season opens.
Yeah, and the deer season.
And the deer season opens. But what they brought in was that before this, there was no rule in relation to ammunition when you were in a car or transporting it.
Okay. I know what you're going to talk about. Yep.
And they brought in this thing called a locked receptacle. They said you have to have ammunition in a locked receptacle when you're transporting it. Yeah. Now, what is a locked receptacle? one man could call it a little bag with a lock in it. Another man could call it a safe in the bank. You know, and everything in between.
Yeah.
But what it is problemsome for in that. Normally what we did was throw, if you have a gun belt on us or whatever.
Yes.
I'm talking more about the person now who's going out shooting, and he goes into a field and does his bit of shooting there, and then he's going on half mile down the road again or whatever, you know.
Yes.
And they do use the word transporting, so I suppose technically if you're walking along the road, you're probably transporting it as well, you know.
Well, I don't know.
But anyway, we'll stick with the car for the minute.
Yes.
But so technically what under this, and this is the law at the minute now, this is not, this is the law. When you come back to the car, you're supposed to take the cartridges out of your pocket or your gun belt and put it into this locked receptacle. Right.
Whatever that is.
If
you're gonna put a padlock on your pocket on your jacket,
it might do.
That's locked receptacle.
Probably would do. I don't know. And but anyway, to make a long story short, we raised this with the department when they brought it. First of all, they didn't properly transpose the EU. What the EU say in relation to this is if you have it in your immediate possession, it's okay. So in other words, if you have it in your pocket, even if you had it beside you there in the seat of the car, it's okay.
Yes.
That's what the EU directive says on it.
Exactly. So it's protected from being stolen by somebody who's not authorized to use it.
Yes. Now they do go on, I think, to say if you got out of the car, you'd be supposed to lock it away, or
yes.
you know.
Yes.
But if it's in your immediate possession, that's grand. So in other words, if you have it in your pocket, if you have it in your gun belt, it's immediate possession, grand. You're supposed to keep the gun away from the ammunition, all right, locked away, which that has been there for years anyway. That's nothing new about that.
Yeah.
So we did go into the department when this came out on the 12th of September, and they said, give us the wording that you think. So we gave them the wording based on the EU directive, you know.
Yeah.
But 5 weeks later, they came back to us and said they wouldn't change it anyway, so they didn't change it. So we have looked to have a meeting with the minister on it to change it. It is a bit nonsensical. Yeah. There is also another nonsensical one that they transposed a few years back where if you have a safe and you lock your gun in it, you're not supposed to put the cartridges into the gun. You're supposed to keep the cartridges separate from the gun.
Yes.
Now, that was a mistake they made. They transposed, I think they used the one in relation to the car for the house.
Yes.
And we have checked all over Europe. All over Europe is consistent with the EU derogation. You know, I think 10 countries came back and told us, you can have ammunition in your immediate possession. When stored in the house, you can store it in a safe with the gun.
Yeah.
You know,
especially that some gun safes, they have special compartment for the ammunition to keep it there because it's locked away.
Yeah, well, I think the department said if you have that separate lock, provided there's a lock on it though, that's okay. The department said that was okay. But a lot of them have just an open shelf.
Yeah, exactly.
It mightn't be locked. So we said that this is nonsensical in that you put in this could be a real good safe.
Yeah.
You know, a real good safe properly put to the wall that it would take, it won't leave there basically.
Yeah.
And you put your gun in, but you have to take the cartridges up and put them into the locker beside the bed that anyone could open with a basic screwdriver.
Exactly.
And so they kind of agreed that was nonsensical. So we looked to change that, but in the heel of the hunt they came back and said they wouldn't change it. Now we're going to have a meeting with the minister, and we might, if your listeners know any politicians, they might mention to them that this is nonsensical. It shouldn't have happened.
Okay, but this is good to know. This is excellent that you brought that up because it means that thing is pretty much ongoing and we can do something about it.
Unfortunately, it is the law at the minute. And,
it is, but it's not like unchangeable.
No, it's not unchangeable. Statutory instruments can be changed by the Minister for Justice. They can be changed. And we thought he would have changed this when we pointed out all this, but he didn't. But we looked for a meeting with him. He hasn't come back yet. He just come back and acknowledged it, but he didn't give us a meeting.
Okay.
But when we get the meeting, we will say to him it has to be changed because it is going to get. It's nonsensical, first of all, and then secondly, someone may get into trouble over it inadvertently by some way. Leave a couple of
and especially that when you have a what is that locked receptacle, right? Like what is it really? So then you're going into interpretation and there's too much interpretation, then you're falling onto somebody having bad day and interpreting something against you.
And already even some guards come back saying you need a safe in the car,
Yeah.
You know what I mean? This is the problem, and this has been a problem with firearms in this country anyway. There's a thing called Commissioner's Guidelines, which is kind of the parameters how you get firearms, and how, you know, for all the users, the applicant, the superintendent who's issuing it, and all the rest. But they have been interpreted all over the place as well.
Yeah.
You know, and this is another one that will be interpreted all over the place. You know, as I say, one superintendent could say, "Oh, you need a lock safe in that car." Another man could say, "Well, if you have some, you know, lock it in the glove compartment will do," or, you know, something. You know, but invariably it'll be subject to different interpretations. You know, and law should be clear.
Exactly.
You know, it should be clear to everyone. You know, and like locked receptacle.
Yeah.
Can mean 100 things. You know what I mean? You know, a Dunnes Stores bag with a lock on it.
Exactly.
Is a locked receptacle.
It is.
Probably, you know.
It is. I mean, like it is.
Yeah. You know, so that's kind of that's the one we're working on at the minute.
That's a very important one.
It is an important one, because
I'm glad you said it, Dan. So tell me, if anyone is listening to that and is not a member of NARGC yet, how they can become a member.
Well, we are a club-based organisation.
Or maybe how they can support your work, because this is what it's down to, right? How they support your work.
Well, you can support the work by getting involved. You know, if there's a project in your area, maybe, obviously there's a lot of bogs coming on stream now with Burnamona pulling out, and we will be involved in projects around the Midlands in relation to the bogs, trying to restore the bogs back, which we'll probably be working with other partners, as we talked about earlier, you know. But, you know, if someone is interested in that, just talk to some of our fellows. Most of our fellows are parish fellows. They're involved in other organisations. You probably know, most people will know someone in a gun club in their area anyway. If obviously they want to get involved fully as shooting people, you have to join a club with our structure. We don't take individual membership. You have to be in a club. We are a whole structure, if you know what I mean. So what I'd say to you is try join your club. Even if you don't want to shoot and you want to be involved, just join your club, because our insurance covers you then on any activity you're at.
And this is my point, right? Exactly, that if somebody will join the club, then they will effectively contribute to your to an NARGC and to work that you're doing.
That's right. And even to go a little bit further, we do a membership for young people. For instance, anyone under 14 can join for a tenner.
Wow.
And anyone between 14 and 19, I think, or 19, is half price. You know, so.
Okay.
And anyone over 70 is half price.
Okay.
So the middle core are full price, if you know what I mean.
Yes, exactly.
But I mean, the reason for that is obviously anyone under 14 is not shooting anyway. They can't have a gun. Right. But the reason is that they could be down with their father, or get them involved down maybe rearing pheasants at a pen, or some of the conservation work or whatever, that they're out there. And it covers them just in case they have some accident.
Exactly.
You know, if they fall away.
And they have this beautiful card.
They get the card as well, that's right. And it gets them involved. It's to try and get... That's one of the problems we noticed down the years. There's not enough young people coming. And this is... This is a common theme with all sports, I think, and all, particularly fishing, is the same problem. Nearly all the countryside sports have the same problem. Youngsters, for some reason, don't seem to be coming on. I suppose there's too many games and too many... whatever, phones and all the rest of it. They're not coming on board. And this was a thing we brought in a couple of years ago. So, you know, the ordinary man there, if he's interested in getting involved in projects or with the gun club, if he's not a shooting man, you know, if he joins, we have to have the insurance, because we have to protect any farmer's land you're on. Because we don't want someone to go in and get an injury. And maybe start claiming of a farmer. So that's the reason we will always protect the farmer. You know, and that's why we want everyone insured, that if an accident happens, you go to the insurance company. You don't go near the farmer's insurance. You know. And just maybe when I am here, just want to thank the farmers, because without the farmers and without the landowners, we'd have nothing.
Oh, that's what I always saying. Like that when you talk about conservation, when you talk about country sports, anything of that all relies on landowners. And landowners are farmers. these are the people who we need to work with if we're serious about any of this stuff.
This exactly. And I think that work has to be even closer from now on. I think we really have to back the farmers. And there was a protest in Dublin last week, and we actually went up to support the farmers on it. There was two or three of us up at it, So we would always try back to that. I think there has to more of that go on. I think we have to, the countryside people have to work together a lot more from all the angles, and the farmer obviously is the key to this, because he owns the land at the end of the day, and he's the man, and farmers have been great members of the clubs down the years. They have, like, the backbone of our club down. We would have a lot of farmer members anyway, but they have been the source, and you work with them, and they will work with you. They always do, and farmers are always, as I said earlier on, they are conservationists. Unfortunately, maybe we've lost a little bit of it in recent years. But the old farmers were the best conservationists of all.
Well, I'm not surprised. The people who are living off the land, and they have this sort of sensitivity, right? They observe those things.
It is, and it's in the blood as well. They like to see the pheasants around. They like to see the birds around. And as I said to you early on, they will. I've seen busy farmers get off a tractor and run out and start shushing birds out of the meadow before they cut it, the way they wouldn't get caught in the machines.
Exactly.
There may be another fellow up at a silage pit roaring at them to take in silage or something, but they will do it, and they always have done it, So, and it is important to work with them, and I think even all countryside people have to work together. We need to work together for the better of the countryside, and, I think our sports are all good sports. I know we can, as you said earlier on, we can get a bad image at times, but I mean, it's up to us to work together and make sure that image is changed, because most of us don't shoot that much, really.
Oh, but involvement in actions like this, like you said, putting money into PhDs, the doctorate students who are doing research, that's a very solid stuff.
Oh, it is.
That's fantastic. Dan, listen, thank you very much for your time. It's been actually optimistic, that conversation, even though we touch on a number of problems. But I think that overall, seeing what you guys are doing and the whole plethora of various things that you're taking on and supporting really hunters and anglers, it's great. So keep up the great work, and thank you very much for your time.
Thanks very much, Tommy, for having me on, and any time at all, come back to me.
Thank you.